Hi everybody, Brian Norcross here. I thought I'd do a video update today because there are things to show. There's nothing imminent in the tropics, but we are starting to indicate that we're beginning to turn a corner. As you know, the tropics have been very dry and dusty and hostile upper level winds out in the Atlantic, and so the systems coming off of Africa have really not been able to develop. It was very common in July, and they've made it all the way to the eastern Pacific where they have been able to develop. Well, we're starting to see signs of change coming up, so I wanted to show you that. Take a look at the satellite picture now. This is all the way to the other side of the Atlantic. This is by Africa, of course, and this is the disturbance that we're watching right there. So the disturbances over Africa are big clusters of thunderstorms. They're gathering moisture and they develop spin. So as they move into the Atlantic and become tropical disturbances, they're kind of fighting back against the dry air and the hostile upper level winds. So all that energy from Africa kind of gets diluted a bit over the Atlantic, but if it's strong enough, it can fight its way through, and that's what we're going to watch for here. So let's look at the analysis by the computer on what's out there. And notice that it has this kind of broad area of spin right in there, and we're going to watch that as it goes across the Atlantic on the computer forecast. So look in the upper left here. That's going to be the day that we're talking about. And then here you see the moisture. So the green is the moisture associated with the system. We also have lots of moisture out in here, but this is typical. It's called the intertropical convergence zone. That moisture is always there. The question is, can we get, or do we get an isolated spinning system to move out into the Atlantic? And so we sort of have that coming up. Okay, so here we are on Monday. Now we're going to go through this week. And I want you to watch. This is all dry air up in here and dust. This is more dry air over here. The browns are dry and the greens are moist. And the greener, the deeper the green, the more moisture. Okay, here we go through the week. Watch it move across the Atlantic. It's kind of pushing back on the dust, but it can't really get organized because there's just so much dust and dry air. So here we are Saturday, and notice we have this moisture near the northeastern Caribbean. Lots of dry air still out in here and surrounding it. So the odds of it developing are very low with all this hostile conditions, but it does seem to survive, and there's a consensus among the various computer forecasts that it survives as a disturbance in the Northeast Caribbean. If all these computer forecasts are right, it's going to come through the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. It's kind of a moisture surge about the weekend time frame and maybe some gusty winds. So that's if it's right. The odds of it being anything different than that seem very low. And we can look at them here. This is the European model, you know about the euro. They provide an analysis of the odds of at least a tropical depression developing. So you see out here in the Atlantic, it's this purple swath. Notice that's at the low end. So we're talking about in the 10, maybe 15% range at most of even a tropical depression developing out there. So feeling good and very low odds once the system gets up here in the Northeast Caribbean area, but generally around Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. But look to the north as we look. This is 10 days out now, so they're beyond 1 week. So the up in here somewhere, there's a little better chance of development. Now, these odds are still very low, but odds in the distant future, 10 days out, are always low, but it gives us an indication of where we're going to want to watch. So Bahamas, eastern Bahamas, in that time frame next week. Now, not this week at all. We're talking next week, and then we'll see. Now, we have a new tool this year, and that are these AI models. And indeed, when we look at them, this is the Google AI model and the European AI model. This one over here, the AIFS, is European. Notice they have a cluster, and they kind of agree that in this Monday time frame, a week from now, that there has a chance of being a disturbance east of the Bahamas that's starting to show some signs of development. So odds aren't high, but this is where we're going to watch based on everything we know now. And then where would it go? There's all kind of possibilities of it moving to the north and so forth, but we're talking about well into next week of a system that is just now coming off of Africa. And as I always say, forecasts or any kind of projections for systems that are disorganized, just organizing, or moving slow are always subject to change and high errors. So just bear that in mind, that this is just something to keep in our mind for perhaps next week. All right, here's what the steering is, and this is why we have some confidence. It's kind of going in that general direction. Strong high pressure here, and notice that high pressure is pulling this dust off of Africa, so that's making life for this disturbance that we're following difficult. We're looking at Wednesday's projection now for how things are going to line up. So the system is in the middle of the Atlantic, and there's a big dip in the jet stream up in here. So the idea is it would come along being driven by the high and then start getting pulled to the north in some kind of fashion, and that's why we think at the end of the week it's in the vicinity of the northeastern Caribbean. So when we look at the future, first of all, for the next 7 days, the National Hurricane Center has no development expected. Here's the system out here, way out here near Africa. So just bearing that in mind, we're talking about a week from now and into next week. And just to watch the change going on in the Atlantic here. So in this case, the greens and then the blues, that's the moisture. So here we are with the system right now that we're watching. This is the moisture that's kind of there all the time. And then you can see up here the general dry air. There is some light moisture, but it's just very, very dry to the north. All right, that's where we are today. Now, watch as we go ahead. We're going to go ahead 10 days now and just watch the change as the tropics evolve. There goes the first system. Here comes another one. Here comes another one. And if you notice, the greens get farther north. That's pushing back on the dust and pushing back on the dry air as the tropics evolve, as they often do and normally do as we get into August. Remember, the first hurricane on average doesn't happen until August 11th. So it's just normal as we get toward August. So this 10 days from now is August 7th. So it's just normal that we start seeing more moisture in the tropics, more higher chances of some kind of development. So nothing to look at right now, except now we have all these tools to kind of look ahead and just get in your head in the area that we might be watching this time next week. We'll see how this evolves this week. Elsewhere, there is a storm moving south of Hawaii. You might hear about a tropical storm. Not going to threaten anybody, so just to keep that in mind. All right, guys, have a good day, and we'll keep you up to date here wherever you get your weather information, either here online or on Fox Weather, which if you go to foxweather.tv, it'll tell you how you can get the continuous coverage, the best coverage on your television, on your Roku or on your phone or on your iPad or on your computer. We can deliver it in all those places. All right, guys, have a good day.